Hello students, Miss Swanson here, and today we're going to learn about the respiratory system. This is also sometimes pronounced as the respiratory system. Now, I chose this picture here because it shows all of the major parts of the respiratory system, and we'll be learning about those today. So we have a few learning goals. You should be able to describe the role of the respiratory system, list and describe the organs, and describe gas exchange. So first of all, what is the purpose? Well, there are two purposes. First, to provide oxygen to all of the cells in the body, and second, to remove carbon dioxide, which is a waste product of respiration, so to remove that carbon dioxide from all of the cells in the body. And you can see in this picture here, it sort of does several zoom-ins. First of all, it zooms in on the alveoli, which are the functional unit of respiration. So it zooms in on the specialized area of the lungs. And if you keep looking at the zoomed in picture down at the bottom there, it shows carbon dioxide going into the alveoli, which is part of the lungs, and oxygen coming from the lungs into the blood cells there. And so we get this exchange of gas happening in these special parts of the lungs. So here are the major parts of the respiratory system. Now, not everything is listed on this diagram, but these are the major parts. So first of all, the air passes through the larynx, which is in the throat, and it goes down into the trachea. The trachea is sometimes known as the windpipe. So the trachea goes down through the top part of the chest and into the bronchi, or bronchus is plural, bronchi is plural. So there are two bronchi that split, one into each of the lungs, and this is another passageway for the air to get into the lungs. At each bronchus, there are bronchioles, which separate the airflow into more and more different directions. And then at the end of each bronchiole, there are alveoli, or alveolus, which is singular, or alveoli, which is plural. And this is where all the gas exchange happens. This is where the oxygen from the air goes into the body and the carbon dioxide from the body goes out into the air again. And then also on this diagram it shows the lungs, obviously one lung on each side, and all of these other parts, the bronchi, the bronchioles, the alveoli, all of those are contained within the lungs. So let's take another look at the alveoli. So these are pockets of air with very, very, very thin walls, and they're surrounded by capillaries. Now, if you haven't watched the video yet on the circulatory system, you'll learn all about capillaries when you watch that video. If you have, you'll probably remember capillaries. These have very, very thin walls, and they allow only a single blood cell through at a time, and so it allows each blood cell to interact with the alveoli. This is where gas exchange occurs, and gas exchange just means oxygen from the air going into the body, into the blood cells so that it can go to the cells of the body, and the carbon dioxide from the cells of the body going out through the lungs. So here, carbon dioxide and oxygen diffuse across the thin walls into and out of the capillaries. And here's a closer view of what's happening here. It's a little bit more detailed, but you can see there's a bronchiole coming from the top left corner there, and it's splitting into several different pockets of alveoli. And within each, surrounding each alveoli, there's the capillaries. So you can see there are blood vessels, the blue being the veins and the red being the arteries. And coming from each of those are the capillaries, which are surrounding around each of those little, they almost look like grapes of the alveoli. And they're surrounding those so that the oxygen and carbon dioxide can go in and out. So let's look at the tissues and the cells that are part of the respiratory system. So first of all, epithelial tissue. And if you don't remember the types of tissues, please go back and watch that video. I'll put a link in the description box below. So there's epithelial tissue in the trachea and in the bronchi that have cilia, which are like little hairs. And these help to prevent things like dust and particles from getting down into the lungs where they can cause damage. So they actually sweep that stuff back out. So when you breathe out, you're breathing out that stuff rather than allowing it to come back into the lungs. And then there are very, very thin, flat epithelial tissue in the alveoli. And we've seen that it's important to have very, very thin epithelial tissue and thin layers of capillary as well, so that the gases can diffuse across. If they're very, very thick layers, it's hard for the gas to get back and forth across the epithelium. So it needs to be very, very thin layers. Next we have connective tissue, and the connective tissue is in general what holds structures together. So the trachea has rings of cartilage surrounding it, so that's an important aspect of the connective tissue. The diaphragm, which is used to breathe in and out, and we didn't see that on that other picture, but we'll come to that in a few slides here. The diaphragm is made out of muscle, so that's part of one of the types of tissue that we learned. So let's look at how we actually breathe. When we breathe in, we need to make space for the air, and when we breathe out, we need to get rid of that air. So in order to make space for the air, when we breathe in, our ribs expand outwards, and our diaphragm, which is a big muscle, it's almost shaped like a parachute that's underneath our lungs, it moves down. So we have our diaphragm moving down and our ribs moving out when we breathe in to allow space for that air to come in. And then when we breathe out, our ribs swing back in and our diaphragm moves back up, and that pushes the air out of our body. So this happens all the time. We don't need to think about it. Sometimes if you are thinking about it, you can make yourself take deeper breaths, or you can make yourself take shallower breaths. But even if you're not thinking about breathing, it will happen naturally. So let's take another look at our learning goals. Can you describe the role of the respiratory system? Can you list and describe the organs? And can you describe gas exchange? If you can do all these things, fantastic. If not, please rewatch the video. And if you're still having trouble, come ask me in class tomorrow. Alright, that's all for now. Bye-bye.